Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the chaos of high-stakes competition and, well, we try to make some sense of it. Today, we are strapping ourselves in for a proper forensic analysis of the 2025 Qatar Grand Prix.
We really are.
This was the penultimate race of a championship season that has been nothing short of spectacular, but it ended in, I think it's fair to say, a strategic tragedy.
Oh, it was a classic F1 weekend, wasn't it? You had everything. Extreme heat, just blistering performance from one team, and yet one single colossal strategic error that people will be talking about for years.
Absolutely. The pressure heading into Qatar was immense, and it just led to this one monumental decision that has completely reshaped the title fight.
It really has.
So, our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're diving deep into all the source material we can find, the team radio, the driver interviews, the fan outrage online, and of course the very complex championship maths to understand how the fastest car on the grid managed to lose a guaranteed race victory.
It's incredible because we had a three-way title fight heading into this race, and against all the odds, we still have one heading into the final round.
And it's largely because of this one event.
Yeah. Max Verstappen, leveraging what was essentially a free pit stop, secured his 7th win of the season. And that victory, it wasn't just another number, was it? It was a massive, massive championship intervention.
Huge.
It slashed the lead Lando Norris had and pulled Verstappen right back into the hunt for a 5th successive title.
In the initial shock nugget, the thing that underpins our entire discussion today is this. McLaren, who were dominating all weekend, looked completely set for a comfortable 1-2 finish.
They really did.
They had the pace, they had the track position, they had all the momentum, and they threw away the race win and potentially the WDC because of a moment of hesitation during an early safety car.
It's the kind of decision that doesn't just get scrutinized, does it? It becomes a piece of F1 folklore. It's an example of what not to do when the pressure is on.
Exactly. And I think before we get into the error itself, we have to appreciate the constraints everyone was operating under, the context of the circuit, the conditions. They didn't just influence the strategy.
No, they absolutely dictated it. There was really only one viable strategy.
Yeah.
So, let's start by setting that scene.
Right. Let's lay the groundwork. We were at the Lusail International Circuit in Qatar 57 high-speed laps. Now, while the heat was definitely a factor, the most critical element, the thing that shaped the whole race, wasn't the temperature. It was a tire mandate from Pirelli.
That is the absolute starting point for understanding anything that happened in this race. Because of the track surface at Lusail, it's notoriously abrasive, and you've got these high-speed, high-G-force corners. Pirelli had some really grave concerns about tire integrity.
About them just not lasting.
Exactly. So to mitigate that risk, they issued a blanket restriction. Teams were limited to a maximum of 25 laps on a single set of tires per stint.
And what does that actually mean for strategy? It just transforms the race, doesn't it? Normally, a two-stop is a choice. Here, it was mandatory. You couldn't try to stretch the middle stint. You couldn't do an aggressive one-stop. You had to stop at least twice.
And those pit windows were exceptionally tight. It creates this fascinating dynamic because it forces strategy into a really rigid box. Every single team knew going in that the clock was ticking on those tires.
So any time saved in the pit lane would just be magnified.
Massively. Which is why that safety car call on lap 7 became so overwhelmingly important. It was the only real wild card, the one chance to do one of those mandatory stops for, half price.
And before any of that drama even came into play, the form guide looked so clear. McLaren were just untouchable all weekend. Oscar Piastri got pole with a blistering time, a 1.13.387. He also dominated and won the sprint race. And Lando Norris lined up right beside him in P2.
I mean, dominant is an understatement, really. The source material we have confirms Piastri was just carrying this immense momentum and confidence into the main race. That pole time was a statement. So the grid was Piastri first, Norris second, Verstappen third, then Russell and Antonelli.
So based purely on Saturday's pace, this was McLaren's race to lose. A 1-2 seemed inevitable.
Any other outcome, barring a mechanical failure or something, seemed pretty much impossible.
Yet after 57 laps, the outcome was indeed very different. Max Verstappen took the win. Oscar Piastri held on for P2, and Lando Norris salvaged to P4.
But let's just underline that point about McLaren's speed one more time. Piastri secured the fastest lap of the race with a 1.22.996.
And that fastest lap is the smoking gun, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It proves unequivocally that the McLaren package, the car itself, was superior on the day. It was fast enough to win, and to win comfortably.
Which makes the strategic failure a pure act of self-sabotage. It was an operational collapse, not a performance deficit. Okay, so setting the McLaren disaster aside for just a moment, we did see some incredible midfield results. Carlos Sainz, driving for Williams, secured a surprise P3 podium. That was one of the stories of the day.
It really was a tremendous performance from both Saints and the Williams team. It was his second podium of the year, and after the race, he was really keen to emphasize that they nailed the race pace and, crucially, the strategy.
They saw the chaos and they capitalized.
They did. Williams converted what they internally feared would be a difficult, maybe even a pointless weekend into a massive success. And the fans were so complimentary of Saints, they noted his revival this season. He's now just 9 points behind his teammate Alex Albon in the driver's standings.
And for Williams as a whole, what a result. It guaranteed them 5th place in the Constructors' Championship. That is a massive, massive leap from where they were.
Oh, it's a monumental achievement for that team. Just think, last year, they finished 9th with only 17 points total across the whole season. To confirm 5th this year just shows brilliant execution, astute management, and just maximizing every single opportunity. Their ability to capitalize on the chaos in Qatar is why they got that trophy.
And elsewhere in the field, we had that intra-Mercedes battle heating up, which is fascinating, isn't it? Especially with Hamilton's eventual departure. Kimi Antonelli finished P5, just ahead of his teammate George Russell in P6.
Yeah, this is a subplot that's getting more and more tense. Antonelli, the rookie, is now only 2 points behind Lewis Hamilton in the overall driver's standings.
And Hamilton had a weekend to forget.
A completely forgettable weekend.
Yeah.
Finished P12, no points. And to see a rookie potentially finish ahead of a 7-time world champion in the standings, well, it adds another layer of intrigue for Abu Dhabi.
It really does. I mean, Hamilton seemed to struggle for pace all weekend. He qualified down in 18th place twice, which is just unheard of for him. It's a rough way to close out a season.
Especially when your potential replacement is performing so well just ahead of you on track. It just gives you a sense of how competitive the field is right now. You can't have an off weekend.
True.
But as compelling as all that was, the defining narrative, the core of this entire deep dive, it all centers on those agonizing few seconds around lap 7. This was where the race, and maybe the championship, was decided.
Okay, let's unpack this moment. This is the pivot point. This is where McLaren's potential 1-2 turned into Verstappen's unlikely win. We're on lap 7.
Right. So the safety car gets triggered by a crash. It is Nico Hülkenberg from Sauber and Pierre Gasly from Alpine. Not a major shunt, but enough to scatter debris, and they have to neutralize the race.
And suddenly, every single person on every pit wall is on hyper alert. The rules of the game have just changed.
And the rules of the game here are so critical because of that mandatory 2-stop rule we talked about. Max Verstappen, running in P2, reacted instantly. He pitted, along with almost the entire rest of the field.
And this was, as you said, the mathematically correct call.
It's not just correct, it's practically compulsory in that situation. Under the safety car, the time you lose in the pit lane is massively reduced because everyone's going slowly.
Right.
Our source material says a normal pit stop costs you about 24 to 26 seconds. Under the safety car, that loss plummets to 13 or 14 seconds.
So you're getting one of your mandatory tire changes at half price.
Exactly. Verstappen knew this, Red Bull knew this, and they executed it flawlessly.
But then we get to the leaders. Piastri running P1 and Norris running P3. They stay out. They watch nearly 18 cars dive into the pit lane, including their main championship rival. The damage was instantaneous.
And catastrophic. And this is the million-dollar question, why? McLaren's team principal, Andrea Stella, he tried to explain it later. He said the team didn't expect everyone else to pit.
Which is a stunning admission.
It really is. It sounds like a stunning admission of just, well, operational naivete. He admitted that once the whole field committed, not pitting instantly became the wrong decision. But they had to make that call in seconds, and they froze.
I struggle to understand the rationale. That sounds less like a strategic error and more like just getting it completely wrong.
Did any of the source material suggest why McLaren thought they knew better than 18 other cars?
That's where this internal conflict theory comes in. And the sources suggest there were multiple conflicting factors at play on that pit wall, and they all seem to be rooted in this desire for fairness between their drivers.
Ah, the fairness trap, or what the fans are now calling the Papaya Rules.
The Papaya Rules, exactly. It refers to McLaren's seeming inability, or maybe refusal, to prioritize one driver over the other, even when a championship is on the line or when one driver clearly has the advantage on track. So in this scenario, Piastri was the lead car. Logic would dictate you maximize the result for him first, and then you figure out what to do with the second car.
That's the conventional wisdom. But there were two major lines of thought about their hesitation. First, they wanted to avoid a double stack. If Piastri had pitted, Norris would have been forced to wait right behind him, and that would have cost Norris, 3 or 4 seconds.
So they might have been trying to avoid disadvantaging Norris, their championship leader?
Potentially. The second thing was some initial confusion over who was making the call. Early reports suggested Piastri might have called to stay out himself. But when you look at the radio transcripts, it's clear that wasn't the case. His engineer told him, "We are staying out to follow the lead car," and Piastri just confirmed the instruction.
So the decision to keep both cars out came directly from the pit wall.
Yes, they sacrificed track position for both drivers.
So they prioritized avoiding a momentary disadvantage for Norris. The double stack over, securing an almost guaranteed race win for Piastri. And in doing so, they put both of them at a huge disadvantage against Verstappen.
Exactly. The analyst Mark Priestley, who used to be an F1 mechanic, he was absolutely scathing about it. He called it a decision that flew in the face of decisions made by every other team. He said it immediately guaranteed they would lose the win to Verstappen.
Who'd just had a free stop.
Priestley flatly stated this was a race McLaren absolutely should have won, and the commentators seemed to agree. Martin Brundle was apparently already calling the race for Verstappen way earlier than David Croft, which shows how obvious the implication was in real time.
You can almost feel the collective facepalm up and down the paddock. So let's talk about the aftermath, the reaction from the drivers. Norris sounded understandably frustrated.
Oh, he was visibly and audibly annoyed.
Yeah.
Lando openly questioned the call on the radio, and then later in the media pen he said they shouldn't have done it, and he acknowledged that Red Bull made the right call. For Norris, it was a massive missed opportunity to maybe even end the title fight right there and then.
But the more profound pain, I think, really belonged to Piastri.
Piastri's reaction was intensely scrutinized because he was the one who lost the guaranteed win. He was described as being speechless. He admitted the decision was, obviously incorrect in hindsight. Fan forums were just alight with comments that the fans were saying he looked pissed off and just had no enthusiasm on the podium.
And the fans felt he'd been robbed, didn't they? That sense of injustice was so palpable online.
Completely. The general consensus was that Piastri was, and I'm quoting here, receiving the ultimate screw job from his own team. The feeling was that his incredible pace was just totally undermined by a team that couldn't be ruthless when it mattered most.
And this leads us to the fan fury, which was just volcanic and immediate. The failure was almost universally labeled incompetent. We saw that dreaded comparison to Ferrari's past mistakes.
The Ferrarification of McLaren.
Exactly.
And that phrase, Ferrarification, it really stuck, didn't it? Because it speaks to this pattern of having a high-performance car that's undone by, low strategic acuity. Ferrari has made similar errors, freezing under pressure. McLaren's decision just felt like a rookie mistake.
Let's dig a bit deeper into this Papaya Rules debate, because the fans don't see this as just one mistake, do they? They see it as a systemic issue.
You have to connect it back to other moments this season to really get it. The team's commitment to fairness has, at times, bordered on the irrational. Think back to the discussion around the Monza swap earlier in the season. There have been these moments where McLaren seems unwilling to let Piastri capitalize on superior pace, maybe to protect Norris.
So the argument from the fans is that this insistence on rigid, almost irrational equality, the Papaya Rules, has cost the team points all season, and in Qatar, it cost them the ultimate prize.
Precisely. By trying to keep it fair and avoid a double stack that would have hurt Norris for a few seconds, they guaranteed that Verstappen, their main threat, got a massive championship-defining advantage.
I saw one fan quote that summarized it perfectly. They said, "Chase two drivers, lose them both."
And that's the implication, isn't it? By trying to keep both Piastri and Norris equally happy, they've jeopardized the team's chance at the big one, the WDC.
It's a fundamental question of team management. When you have two drivers fighting for the title, do you prioritize the one who's ahead in the points, or do you ruthlessly maximize the result for the car that's leading the race right now?
And in Qatar, they failed to do either effectively. Their failure was total. It cost Piastri the win, and it meant Norris finished P4 instead of what should have been an easy P2. It was a massive self-inflicted wound that just handed Max Verstappen a lifeline.
And the psychological impact of this on Piastri going into the final race has to be immense. He knows the car is quick, but can he trust the pit wall?
He can't. And that psychological dimension just sets the stage perfectly for the ultimate confrontation in Abu Dhabi.
Let's transition now to the hard numbers, because the results of Qatar mean the championship is so close. With only 25 points available for a win at the final race, Every single permutation matters.
Going into the final round, round 24, the standings are razor sharp. Lando Norris, he still leads with 408 points. Max Verstappen is in P2 with 396 points, so the gap is only 12 points.
And Oscar Piastri.
He's sitting in P3 with 392 points, which puts him 16 points behind Norris.
12 points. That's a single race difference. It means Norris is still in the driver's seat. He controls his own destiny, but the margin for error is, well, it's non-existent.
Correct. The key statistic for Norris, the magic number, is P3. If he finishes P3 or higher in Abu Dhabi, he clinches the World Drivers' Championship.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where Verstappen or Piastri finish. A podium is all he needs.
Which brings us back to the importance of those final laps in Qatar. Norris finished P4, but he pulled off that brilliant move on Kimi Antonelli on the penultimate lap. He gained a position.
And 2 crucial extra points. Those 2 points are absolutely vital. If Norris had finished P5, the gap would have been 10 points. At 12 points, the maths is a little more favorable for him. It significantly widens the margin that Verstappen needs to win on a tiebreaker.
Let's walk through that specific scenario, because this is where it gets messy. What exactly has to happen for Max Verstappen to win the title?
Well, it's the highest stakes scenario in F1. A tie on points is a possibility. But let's look at the most direct path for him. Verstappen has to win the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That gets him 25 points.
Right, so that would take him to 421 points.
Exactly. Now, if Verstappen wins, Norris has to finish P4, which would earn him 12 points.
And 408 plus 12 is 420. So in that
That is-
scenario, Verstappen wins the title by 1 single point.
That's the knife edge. If Verstappen wins the race, Norris must secure P2 or P3. If Lando is P4, he loses the title. If he's P5 or lower, he loses even more dramatically. That's why that P3 goal for Norris is so concrete. It just eliminates all the uncertainty.
The pressure on Norris to deliver that podium, regardless of what's happening around him, is just astronomical now.
It is, and we have to acknowledge the sheer spectacle of Verstappen's comeback narrative. It's been nothing short of Herculean. Just a couple of months ago, after Zandvoort, he was 104 points adrift. That is an enormous deficit to overcome.
It really is.
His victory in Qatar, his 7th win, keeps him in the hunt for a 5th successive title. It's an incredible achievement.
And it speaks volumes about his ability to capitalize on any mistake from his rivals. Red Bull did not have the fastest car in Qatar, but Max walked away with the 25 points. And you see fans saying, maybe this proves he is the best driver this season, just based on his ability to snatch wins that others hand him.
He's the ultimate predator just waiting for a mistake.
Yeah.
While we've rightly focused on McLaren's strategy, the fact remains that Verstappen was completely faultless when that window of opportunity opened.
Now let's turn to Oscar Piastri. He is now the mathematical outside bet. He needs an absolute miracle.
He really does. He needs to win. And he needs both Norris and Verstappen to have disastrous races, finish outside the points completely. It's a very long shot.
And he's in the most frustrating position. There's a lot of fan discussion looking at his midseason form. Some fans, maybe a bit unfairly, have accused him of an all-time choke job after he had that early 30-point lead in the championship, only to see it evaporate.
That narrative, while harsh, it is fueled by looking back at moments that cost him points. We've mentioned the controversial Monza swap, and there was that incident with Russell at the Spanish Grand Prix where he lost a good result.
So the cumulative effect of those moments, plus the Qatar blunder, means that even though Piastri's pace has been supreme in the second half of the season, the title is now slipping away.
He's been let down by the team for sure, but maybe he hasn't maximized every single opportunity he had either. It's a combination of things.
Looking ahead to Abu Dhabi then, the Yas Marina circuit, what does the technical analysis suggest about this final battlefield?
The expert outlook, which is reinforced by fan sentiment, is that McLaren is predicted to be, and I'm quoting here, 100% the strongest car at Yas Marina.
Really?
Yeah, it's a circuit that rewards strong downforce and efficient medium-speed corners, which just perfectly suits the current McLaren package.
And conversely, Red Bull is generally seen as weaker there.
Yes, or at least less dominant than on other types of circuits. They have struggled there recently compared to their peak performance. But we can't ignore Ferrari.
Yes.
They showed really strong pace at Abu Dhabi last year. And if they get into the mix, say if Charles Leclerc or Carlos Sainz are fighting for P2 or P3, it could seriously complicate the calculations for both Norris and Verstappen.
So if the car is predicted to be dominant, the entire championship fate rests solely on McLaren's execution and, critically, their willingness to finally abandon the Papaya rules.
That's the crux of it. They've built the rocket ship. The question is, can they navigate it politically?
And this is probably the most fraught and uncomfortable topic in Formula One right now. The integrity of the championship just hinges on the internal calculus of that McLaren pit wall. The Papaya rules are facing their ultimate test.
McLaren's philosophy of absolute driver fairness has been their guiding light all season long. But in Abu Dhabi, they face a situation where upholding that philosophy will almost certainly cost them the World Drivers' Championship.
Let's run through that exact scenario one more time, because the stakes are just impossible to overstate. It's late in the Abu Dhabi race. Max Verstappen is winning the race. He's in P1. Oscar Piastri is ahead of Lando Norris. Let's say they're running P3 and P4.
In that situation, Norris, finishing P4, loses the WDC by 1 point to Verstappen. We've established that. For Norris to win, he must be P3 or better. McLaren knows this. So the pressure on the team principal, Stella, to issue a team order to ask Piastri to give up his P3 position to Norris will be overwhelming.
This is where the emotional side of the sport just collides head-on with the business reality of it all. What is that driver dynamic going to be like? Piastri, after what happened in Qatar, may feel absolutely zero obligation to help Norris.
The fan debate around this is just ferocious. Many fans, still outraged by Qatar, are suggesting Piastri should just refuse the order, flat out. Their argument is, if the team was willing to sacrifice his race win for some abstract idea of fairness, then he owes them nothing now.
And that sentiment, it comes from this belief that if Piastri complies, he'll forever be seen as the definitive number 2 driver at McLaren. It could harm his career. Why should he sacrifice his own podium for a team that sacrificed his win just 2 weeks before?
Some of the more dramatic fan speculation even suggests Piastri would rather see Verstappen win the title than help Lando.
Yeah.
Just out of revenge, which really highlights the deep psychological damage that the Qatar strategy has done to the team's internal dynamic.
But let's look at the counter-argument. From a purely professional point of view, once Piastri is mathematically out of the title fight, which he basically is, doesn't his professional obligation shift to maximizing the team's achievement? And the team's biggest achievement is the WDC.
Absolutely. Other segments of the fan base and analysts, they argue that team orders are just a logical and common part of championship racing. They point to historical precedents. This isn't the first time an issue like this has come up.
I should elaborate on those because they give us some necessary context. I mean, think back to 2007.
Yeah, the 2007 World Drivers' Championship. It famously came down to the final race, and Felipe Massa played a critical role in helping his teammate Kimi Raikkonen secure the title for Ferrari. Massa was leading the race, and he effectively handed the win to Raikkonen. It was a tough call, but it was what was needed to ensure the team won the WDC.
And more recently, the controversial 2021 finale in Abu Dhabi, Sergio Perez played a key role.
The famous Minister of Defense moment? Perez sacrificed his own race, holding up Lewis Hamilton for several laps, which allowed Max Verstappen to close the gap. It was a clear tactical move to serve the team leader, and Perez earned immense credit from Red Bull for it.
So Piastri would be well within the historical context of F1 to comply, but the emotional context, because of Qatar, is so different.
It creates an almost impossible choice for Andrea Stella. If he issues the order, he violates the very Papaya Rule principle of fairness that's defined their whole season. If he doesn't issue the order and they lose the title by 1 point, he'll be criticized forever for valuing philosophy over the trophy.
And the fans are ready for this debate. Many have already said that a WDC won by a team order in this specific scenario would leave a sour taste. They'd argue Lando wouldn't have truly earned it.
Which raises a fundamental question for the sport, doesn't it? Does merit only lie in points gained on track? Or does the strategic use of team assets, including a second driver's help, also count as part of championship merit? McLaren's commitment to fairness has painted them into a corner.
And while McLaren wrestles with its soul, we also have to consider external factors. What about Red Bull? Are we expecting any high-stakes maneuvering from them?
Oh, F1 fans are always ready to speculate on dirty tricks, and Red Bull has a reputation for being ruthless. The discussion online is rife with hypothetical measures. Could they use their second team, RB, to interfere?
Right. I've seen discussions about bringing back the Mexican Minister of Defense, Sergio Perez, or maybe offering some huge motivation to Yuki Tsunoda, who finished P10 in Qatar.
And that pressure could translate to Yuki being told to hold up a McLaren, or maybe pit strategically to create a safety car if Max needed help. We saw similar speculation in Qatar, where fans were asking why Isaac Hadjar in the RB car didn't just park his car late in the race to trigger a safety car to protect Max's lead.
So the ultimate battle in Abu Dhabi is going to be less about lap times and more about nerves and strategic bravery.
It's all about that. The complexities are just immense. The fact the championship is still open, despite McLaren's monumental pace advantage in Qatar, is simply stunning.
Now, before we conclude, we have to acknowledge that despite all the drama, there were some genuine high points in Qatar that deserve recognition.
Definitely. One truly wonderful moment was seeing Hannah Schmitz, the Red Bull chief strategist, on the podium with Max. Her presence there was widely praised, recognizing her well-deserved success. She's a powerhouse in the sport, and it's powerful representation for women in motorsport strategy.
Absolutely. And we can't forget Piastri's sheer class on that podium. Despite knowing his own team had just cost him a win, he showed incredible sportsmanship.
He was visibly furious and deflated, yet he was utterly professional. He congratulated Max, he did the whole ceremony, and it drew so many comparisons to Lewis Hamilton after that heartbreaking loss in Abu Dhabi in 2021. It just showed profound sportsmanship through immense disappointment.
It speaks volumes about his character, and I suppose, regardless of the strategic flaws, the fact remains that for us, the viewers, the championship remains spectacularly open. It promises a finale for the ages.
To synthesize the key takeaways from Qatar then, McLaren's supreme pace was completely neutralized by one singular, indefensible strategy blunder during that lap 7 safety car. That failure gifted Max Verstappen the victory and tightened the World Drivers' Championship margin to a mere 12 points.
And now the complexity of the title fight has shifted entirely. It's not really about raw speed anymore because the McLaren is expected to be dominant in Abu Dhabi. It's about the political, emotional, and mathematical calculus inside that McLaren garage.
Exactly. They built the fastest car, they won the Constructors' title, but they seem to be internally crippled by their own self-imposed doctrine of fairness.
We are heading into a situation that tests the very definition of a sports team. If Piastri finds himself in a position to decide the title by simply refusing a team order, what are the broader ramifications? This scenario will impact future driver contracts, team morale, and challenge the very notion of fairness in championship racing.
That is the ultimate question hanging over this final race weekend. The fate of the 2025 WDC rests entirely on the execution of one race, where one team's attempt at fairness may lead to the most dramatic internal conflict we've seen in years.
And potentially hand the trophy to their fiercest, most ruthless rival. All eyes turn to Abu Dhabi Round 24 on December 7th. We will see how this impossible situation plays out.